I want you to imagine, just for a second, walking right into a hospital emergency room.
Okay, usually a pretty stressful place to be.
Right, but instead of the usual, structured chaos, every single patient sitting in that waiting area has a bright red critical tag on their wrist.
Oh, wow, so no triage at all.
Exactly. The person with the paper cut has a red tag. The person having a literal cardiac event has a red tag. The guy with a mild headache, the victim of a car crash, all of them, red tags.
That's a nightmare for the medical staff.
It is, because if you're the triage nurse looking at that room, your prioritizing engine it completely breaks down. You freeze.
Yeah, because the visual data is stripping away your ability to actually differentiate severity.
Yes, exactly.
When the system tells you that everything is a life or death emergency, the brain just defaults to paralysis. It's too much.
And that right there is the exact diagnostic landscape of modern knowledge work.
Oh, that's such a good point.
I mean, think about it. You open your inbox, you look at your task manager, you check your Slack messages, and you are staring at a waiting room full of red tags.
Every single ping.
Right. Every notification, every just following up email is artificially elevated to like a Category 1 emergency by the platform delivering it.
Yeah, because the platforms are designed to demand your attention instantly.
You literally cannot tell what is a broken bone and what is just a bruise anymore.
Well, the human brain simply didn't evolve to process 50 simultaneous, equally weighted demands for attention.
No, of course not.
It triggers this constant low-grade fight-or-flight response.
And I really want to pause right here at the top of the show to validate that feeling for you, the listener.
It's so important to acknowledge that.
Because if you are operating with that overwhelming, almost, suffocating sense that there is simply way too much to do, it is not because you lack discipline.
Not at all.
It is because your environment is actively working against your cognitive architecture.
That's beautifully put. Your brain is under siege.
Your inbox is overflowing. The reading pile on your desk is basically a structural hazard at this point.
I know that pile well.
Right. And you probably feel like if you could just, get a magical 4-day weekend, you could finally get caught up.
Which, I hate to say it, is the most dangerous fantasy in modern professional life.
We are going to dismantle that fantasy completely today. Welcome to our deep dive into the foundational concepts of Brian Tracy's legendary program, Eat That Frog.
Such an incredible source material. It's a classic for a reason.
It really is. But let's set the parameters of this conversation immediately, right?
Yeah, let's manage expectations.
Our mission today is not to give you a shiny new app or teach you how to type faster so you can run on the hamster wheel at a higher velocity.
The goal is to step off the wheel entirely.
Exactly.
We need to fundamentally alter how you interact with time, sequence, and honestly, your own neurochemistry.
Okay, let's unpack the central metaphor before we go any further, because out of context, it sounds absolutely absurd.
It's definitely a weird phrase to say to someone who hasn't heard it.
Eat that frog. I mean, what does that even mean? It traces back to a concept often attributed to Mark Twain, right?
Yeah, the idea is that the very first thing you do each morning is to eat a live frog.
Sounds delicious.
Right. But if you do that, you can go through the rest of your day with the comforting satisfaction of knowing that that is probably the worst thing that's going to happen to you.
It's a brilliantly visceral image.
It really is.
Yeah.
In the framework of our source material today, your frog is your biggest, most important task.
The one you're dreading.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the single item you are most likely to procrastinate on if you don't aggressively intervene and force yourself to do it.
But paradoxically, it's also the one task that carries the greatest potential positive impact on your life and your results at this exact moment.
Yeah, the frog is where the value is.
So our objective today is to figure out how to locate your personal frogs in that crowded emergency room we talked about.
Strip the red tags off the paper cuts.
Yes. And learn the psychological strategies to just devour the frogs before the day gets away from you.
But the source material hits us with a pretty brutal mathematical reality right out of the gate.
Oh, yeah. It does not pull any punches.
Before we start eating anything, we have to kind of grieve the death of a dream.
The myth of emptying the inbox.
Exactly. The source states this explicitly, and honestly, it hurts to read. You will never get caught up.
Just period. End of sentence.
Period. There will always be more to do than there is time available to do it.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
You will never get on top of all your tasks or get far enough ahead to finally read all those books or start all those side projects.
The reason we resist this is fascinating, though, from a behavioral standpoint.
Oh, completely.
We have been conditioned to view productivity as a volume game. It's the Industrial Revolution hangover.
Like the factory mindset.
Yeah. If a factory worker moves faster on the assembly line, they produce more widgets, and eventually the quota is met. The day is done.
But we apply that exact same logic to knowledge work.
And it doesn't fit.
Not at all. We think, if I just learn keyboard shortcuts, or maybe I sleep an hour less, I'll finally reach the finish line.
But knowledge work has no physical boundary. The river of responsibilities is basically infinite.
It's like being on a treadmill, where the speed dial is controlled by everyone else on the internet.
That is a terrifying thought.
Right.
But okay, if the math dictates that we absolutely cannot catch up, why do we even bother with time management?
It feels futile, right?
Yeah. Isn't it just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic at that point?
Well, the paradigm shift in the source material redefines the term itself. True time management isn't actually about managing time at all.
Because time just happens.
Exactly. Time passes at the exact same rate, regardless of what we do. What we are really talking about here is sequence management.
Sequence management, so controlling the order of operations.
Yes. Since you mathematically cannot do everything, your entire professional trajectory hinges on your ability to select the most important task at any given moment.
You have to pick the right next step.
You select it, you start it, and you drive it to completion. It is a massive shift from focusing on volume to focusing on selection.
Okay, so the text lays out two foundational rules of frogging to kind of guide that selection process. Rule number 1, if you have 2 frogs, eat the ugliest one first.
Which makes sense, but it goes against all our instincts.
Totally. If you're staring down 2 massive, high-impact tasks, human nature will literally beg you to start with the slightly easier one.
Right, just to build momentum, we tell ourselves.
But the text argues you must aggressively push back against that urge. You have to tackle the absolute monster first.
And then rule number 2 is, if you have to eat a live frog at all, it doesn't pay to sit and look at it for very long.
Action orientation over analysis paralysis. Just take a bite.
The urgency here is actually tied directly to human biology. The source touches on this, but if we dive into the neurochemistry of completion, things get really interesting.
Oh, I love this part. This isn't just about having a strong Protestant work ethic or, getting a gold star from your boss.
No, there is a very real physiological mechanism at play here. When you complete a significant task, your brain triggers a release of endorphins.
We are essentially manufacturing our own natural high.
Exactly. It's a chemical reward system built into our biology. You experience a measurable surge in energy, enthusiasm, and self-esteem when you finish something hard.
And here is the critical part, right? The volume of endorphins scales with the perceived difficulty and importance of the task.
Yes.
So clearing out 50 junk emails might give you a tiny, fleeting blip of dopamine.
A little spark.
But finishing a massive, complex project drops a heavy dose of endorphins that fundamentally alters your mood for the rest of the entire day.
It changes how you feel about yourself. And the author suggests that you can actually actively develop a positive addiction to this specific neurochemical loop.
That honestly sounds like a superpower.
It kind of is. Instead of craving the cheap dopamine hit of pulling down to refresh a social media feed.
Which we all do.
We all do it. But instead of that, you're actively training your brain's reward centers to crave the deep, sustained satisfaction of conquering something genuinely difficult.
You are inducing neuroplasticity.
Bingo. By repeatedly choosing the hardest task first, you literally wire your brain to associate the friction of deep work with the ultimate chemical payoff.
So eating the ugliest frog stops being this miserable exercise in sheer willpower and actually starts becoming a biological drive.
You start wanting to do it.
Okay, so I understand the chemistry, and I've accepted the sad reality that my inbox will never be empty.
RIP to the empty inbox.
Seriously. But let's look at the actual friction point here. I'm staring at my chaotic list of 50 tasks. Knowing about endorphins doesn't magically sort the list for me.
No, it doesn't.
How does the brain even begin to filter this noise to find the actual frog? Because everything is camouflaged as an emergency.
Well, the primary obstacle at this stage isn't a lack of motivation, actually. It is vagueness.
Vagueness.
Yeah. The source argues that fuzzy-mindedness and confusion are the root causes of almost all procrastination.
That makes a lot of sense.
When the brain doesn't have a crystal clear target, the amygdala, which is your threat detection center, perceives that ambiguity as danger.
Wow, so triggers an avoidance response.
Exactly. Procrastination isn't necessarily laziness. It is the brain's defense mechanism against ambiguity.
So to stop procrastinating, we have to clear the fog.
And the antidote to that ambiguity is a concept the text calls thinking on paper.
Thinking on paper.
The statistics cited here are just stark. Only about 3% of adults operate with clear, written goals.
3%.
Just 3%. Unwritten goals are basically just wishes floating around in your prefrontal cortex. They have no anchor.
I really want to break down why the physical act of writing is so crucial, because I think it's easy to dismiss as, analog nostalgia, like, oh, just use a notebook.
Right. It sounds a bit old school.
But when you take a vague anxiety about a massive project and you force it through the motor cortex to write it down physically on paper, you engage the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS is so powerful. It's the brain's primary filtering network.
It's what allows you to hear your own name spoken in a crowded, noisy room across the party.
Exactly. By writing down the goal, you literally program your RAS to start scanning your environment for resources, ideas, and opportunities related to that specific outcome.
You are giving a tangible, physical architecture to what was just a nebulous thought.
You're bringing it into reality, and the text provides a really robust 7-step framework for building this architecture.
But rather than just treating it as a boring checklist, let's look at the behavioral design behind it.
Good idea. So step 1 is deciding exactly what you want.
Which sounds simple, but the source points out a tragic reality here. Thousands of people work themselves to the bone every single day on low-value tasks.
Why? Because they never actually had a clarifying conversation with their manager or even with themselves about what is truly expected of them.
Right. If the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall, climbing faster is a detriment, not a benefit.
You're just getting to the wrong place sooner. So that's step 1. Step 2 is thinking on paper, which we just discussed. Get it out of your head.
Step 3 is setting a deadline. This is massive because it introduces a forcing function.
Yeah, a goal without a deadline has zero biological urgency. It doesn't trigger any productive stress at all.
Step 4 involves externalizing your working memory. You make a list of everything required to achieve the goal.
You are offloading the cognitive burden. Your brain isn't great at storing lists. It's meant for processing.
Right, so get it all on the paper. Step 5 organizes that list into a sequential plan.
What happens first? What happens second? You draw a map.
Step 6 is immediate action. And the source is ruthless here. I love this part.
Oh, it's so aggressive.
An average plan vigorously executed today is infinitely better than a brilliant plan executed next week.
Don't wait for perfect. Just start. And then step 7 builds the habit loop. Resolve to do something every single day that moves you toward that major goal.
It maintains that neurochemical momentum we talked about earlier.
It keeps the endorphin engine running.
I am going to push back on this entire process, though, if that's okay.
Please do.
If a listener is already drowning in that emergency room of red tags, telling them to stop working and spend precious hours writing out a detailed 7-step architectural plan,
It sounds counterproductive.
it sounds like telling a drowning person to study fluid dynamics before they swim. Isn't excessive planning just another form of sophisticated procrastination?
It absolutely can be, and that is a very valid trap to worry about, which is why the source counters that specific fear with hard data.
Let's hear the data.
We have to look at the 1090 rule and what the author calls the 6P formula. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance.
The military uses a variation of that as well, usually with an expletive thrown in.
Yeah, exactly. But the mathematics of the 1090 rule completely neutralize the argument that planning is a waste of time.
How so?
Taking just 10 to 12 minutes to plan your day can save up to 120 minutes of wasted effort and diffused focus the following day.
Wait, 12 minutes saves 2 hours.
Up to 2 hours. The first 10% of time spent planning saves 90% of the time in execution.
That is an asymmetric return on investment. I'll trade 12 minutes for 2 hours any day of the week.
Right. And you achieve this through a specific hierarchy of lists. You don't just dump everything onto one chaotic sheet of paper, because that's just moving the emergency room to a notepad.
So what's the hierarchy?
You maintain a master list for capturing every idea that crosses your mind. That's your cognitive inbox. Just get it out of your head.
Okay, master list.
Then you have a monthly list, which you derive from the master list. A weekly list built at the end of the previous week.
Narrowing it down.
Exactly. And finally, you extract the vital few items for your daily list.
And there is a very specific psychological reason. The text insists you must write that daily list the night before, not the morning of.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
Oh,
It leverages the subconscious mind.
how does that work?
When you finalize your list before going to sleep, you essentially assign your subconscious a problem to solve overnight. While you are resting, Your brain is actively working on those tasks.
It's making associative connections while you sleep.
Precisely.
I have experienced this firsthand, actually. You wake up with a fully formed idea for an email or a strategy that you were completely stuck on the day before.
Because you didn't have to waste your morning willpower deciding what to do. Your brain just started figuring out how to do it.
You literally hit the ground running. The sequence is locked in.
It's a game changer.
Okay, let's play this out realistically. The listener spent 12 minutes last night. They funneled everything down to a daily list.
Good for them.
But we hit a new friction point here. The daily list still has 20 items on it. It is perfectly organized, it's categorized, but it is still physically impossible to finish in an 8-hour workday. We are back at the edge of the frog pond, staring at 20 sets of eyes.
Staring right back at you.
How do we filter this down?
This is the moment for ruthless prioritization. And we rely heavily on the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
Most of our listeners are probably familiar with Vilfredo Pareto's 19th century observation, right? It started with wealth distribution, 20% of the people owning 80% of the land in Italy.
Right, and it applies to modern business too, like 20% of clients generating 80% of revenue.
But the application to personal task management is where it gets incredibly aggressive.
The foundational truth here is that if you have 10 items on your list, 2 of those items will turn out to be worth 5 or 10 times more than the other 8 items put together.
Here's where I want to push past the basic 80-20 concept, because if you apply fractal mathematics to the Pareto principle, the implications are staggering.
Let's do the math.
The 80-20 rule applies to itself. So if you take the top 20% of your tasks and apply the 80-20 rule to them, you discover that roughly 4% of your actions drive 64% of your results.
That is a massive realization.
It really is. It means that out of a 50-item to-do list, there are maybe 1 or 2 singular actions that contain almost all of your professional value for the week.
And the tragedy here is that every single item on that list might take the exact same amount of time to complete.
Wow, yeah. Sending a mundane administrative email takes 20 minutes. Outlining the architecture for a brand new product takes 20 minutes.
The time cost is identical. The leverage is worlds apart.
The average person chronically procrastinates on the vital 4%, the monster frogs, while busying themselves with the trivial 96%.
They feel productive because they are moving fast.
But they're moving fast in the completely wrong direction.
Exactly. To combat this illusion of productivity, the text gives us a grading system called the ABCDE method. It's a cognitive filter you apply before you execute a single action.
Okay, let's walk through it.
You go down your written daily list and assign a letter to every item. A tasks are your absolute must-dos. These are your frogs.
And the defining characteristic of an A task is consequence.
Yes, serious consequences.
There are major, tangible consequences if you do it, and serious consequences if you fail to do it. Securing the primary funding round, finishing the quarterly tax filing.
Right. If you have multiple A tasks, you rank them A1, A2, A3. The A1 task is the ugliest frog in the pond.
Okay, what about B?
B tasks are the tadpoles. These are things you should do. They carry only mild consequences.
Like what?
Returning a non-urgent phone call, reviewing a colleague's routine report. Someone might be slightly inconvenienced if you don't do it, but the company won't collapse.
The inviolable rule of this system, and this is so hard to stick to, is that you never, under any circumstances, begin a B task while an A task is left undone.
That is the discipline. It's so tempting to knock out the B tasks just to cross something off, but you can't do it.
Moving on to C.
C tasks are things that are nice to do. Having coffee with a coworker, checking an industry blog, 0 professional consequences whether you do them or not.
D stands for delegate, right?
Yes. This is anything someone else can do. You have to offload B tasks to free up the bandwidth required for your A tasks.
And finally, we arrive at what I think is the most difficult letter of all, E for eliminate.
This is where the psychological friction is highest.
It really is. Because it's easy to label the big, scary A tasks. We know what they are. But the E tasks, the things we are supposed to eliminate entirely, are often things we actually enjoy doing.
Because we do them out of habit. We're usually quite good at them.
Right. They make us feel competent. How do we force ourselves to abandon tasks that feel good but provide 0 leverage?
The source introduces a brilliant behavioral reframe here called creative procrastination.
Creative procrastination. That sounds like an oxymoron.
We usually think of procrastination as a failure of character, right? Like we're just being lazy.
Yeah, that's the guilt trip we all go on.
But since you mathematically cannot do everything, you are already procrastinating on something right now.
Oh. You don't have a choice in whether you procrastinate, only in what you procrastinate on.
Exactly. Most people engage in unconscious procrastination. They accidentally put off the massive, life-changing A tasks because they're busy doing C tasks.
So what is the creative version?
Creative procrastination is the deliberate, strategic decision to procrastinate on low-value tasks.
We spend so much time trying to set priorities, but this requires us to set posteriorities.
I love that word. A priority is something you elevate and do sooner. A posteriority is something you actively suppress and do later, or ideally never at all.
If you want to take on a new high-leverage project, you must actively abandon an old low-leverage one.
Getting in requires getting out.
Warren Buffett is actually quoted in the text illustrating this perfectly. His secret to success isn't necessarily analyzing better than anyone else. It is the sheer volume of things he ignores.
He's the master of elimination.
He says, I just say no to everything that is not absolutely vital to me at the moment.
It is the strategic deployment of the word no.
There is a story in the text about a woman named Cynthia that I think is the ultimate masterclass in this.
Oh, Cynthia's story is incredible.
Let me set it up. Cynthia was an executive in a high-tech firm, and she was just drowning. She was working 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Classic burnout trajectory.
Completely. Her family life was suffering, her health was suffering, and she went to the author for coaching because she physically could not sustain the pace anymore.
And he didn't give her a calendar app or tell her to manage her time better. He asked her to perform a radical audit.
He told her to list every single task she was responsible for over the course of a month. She came up with a list of 17 discrete responsibilities.
And then he applied the ultimate constraint.
Right. He asked her, if you were quarantined and could only do one thing on this list all day long, which single task would contribute the greatest measurable value to your company?
She really had to think about it, but she identified her single most vital function.
Then he asked for the second most important, and then the third.
This is an application of what's called the law of three. In almost any knowledge work position, there are 3 core tasks that account for the vast majority of your actual value.
When Cynthia isolated her top 3 tasks, the reality of her situation just crystallized. Fully 90% of the value she brought to her firm was locked inside just those 3 activities.
Which means the other 14 items on her list.
The items which were consuming 80% of her time, by the way.
Right. Those 14 were administrative support, routine meetings, low-level management.
Recognizing that is one thing, though. Acting on it requires immense professional courage.
She had to put it on the line.
She took that list to her boss on a Monday morning. She didn't ask for a vacation. She presented the hard data. She pointed to the 14 minor tasks and said she wanted to delegate, outsource, or eliminate them completely so she could focus exclusively on the big 3.
And then she laid down a massive marker.
She said, if I double my contribution to the company by focusing on these 3, I would like to be paid twice as much.
You can imagine the tension in that room.
Right. But her boss looked at the breakdown and realized she was entirely correct. Those 3 tasks were the growth engines. The rest was just maintenance.
The outcome of this is staggering.
Over the next 30 days, by ignoring the 14 tadpoles and single-mindedly eating the 3 massive frogs, her output actually doubled.
And her boss honored the agreement and doubled her income.
She went from working 70 hours a week to working standard 8 to 5 days, and she got her weekends back. All by eliminating E-tasks.
Cynthia's story perfectly illustrates the concept of key result areas, or KRAs.
Let's define that for the listener.
These are the critical functions you are explicitly paid to perform. The core reasons you are on the payroll, the things where if you don't do them, the machine literally stops working.
Identifying your 5 to 7 KRAs is mandatory. But the text introduces a diagnostic tool here that is, frankly, deeply uncomfortable.
Oh, it forces you to look in the mirror.
Once you know your KRAs, you have to grade your current proficiency in each one on a scale of 1 to 10.
And the governing rule of this exercise is, your weakest key result area sets the absolute ceiling on your overall success.
Okay, let's trace the mechanics of that. Give me an example.
Right, let's say I am a software engineer.
Okay.
And I am a 10 out of 10 at writing clean code. I'm a 9 out of 10 at system architecture. But I am a 2 out of 10 at communicating with the product team.
Oh, I've worked with that guy.
We all have. My brilliant code doesn't matter because my communication bottleneck restricts the deployment of the product. My 2 out of 10 communication skills permanently limit my 10 out of 10 coding skills.
It acts as a permanent drag coefficient on your entire career.
And the psychological trap here is that the area where you possess the lowest skill is almost always the exact area where you procrastinate the most.
Because we avoid what makes us feel incompetent.
Exactly. So the inner game of eating the frog requires an honest assessment of bottlenecks. This is rooted in Eliyahu Goldratt's theory of constraints.
Remind me how that works.
In any system, the speed of the entire process is determined by the single slowest point, the choke point.
So the source challenges the listener to identify the specific constraint that is dictating the speed at which they are achieving their major goal.
Yes. But here is the bitter pill. Human nature is to look out the window when searching for a constraint.
We blame macroeconomic factors, we blame our incompetent manager, we blame the algorithm.
Always outward. But the author applies the 80-20 rule to bottlenecks. Fully 80% of the constraints holding you back from your goals are internal.
Ouch.
Yeah. They're located inside your own habits, your own skill deficiencies, your own limiting beliefs. Only 20% are external realities.
Looking in the mirror and asking, what is it in me that is holding me back, strips away the comfort of victimhood.
It does. But it is also the most empowering realization you can have.
Because internal constraints are entirely within your control to fix. You can't fix the economy, but you can fix your communication skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you identify that internal block, you have to initiate movement. And if nobody is coming to rescue you, you have to manufacture your own urgency.
The text calls this putting the pressure on yourself. And I absolutely love the specific mental model introduced here, the forced efficiency law.
The forced efficiency law states that while there's never enough time to do everything, there is always enough time to do the most important thing.
We see this every time someone goes on vacation.
Yes, the vacation scramble.
For 3 weeks, they dawdle on a project. But the day before their flight, a hard deadline descends, and miraculously, they execute the vital components of that project in 4 hours.
The time was always there. The forcing function was just missing.
The author suggests simulating this environment daily. The imaginary vacation tactic.
It's a great thought experiment. You sit at your desk in the morning and pretend you just received an urgent message. You have to leave town tomorrow for a month, completely off the grid. No laptop, no phone.
What is the one single task you would scramble to finish today before you left? That task is your A1 frog.
But to sustain that kind of manufactured pressure, day in and day out, without just spiraling into burnout, you have to master your internal dialogue.
And that's where the text leans into the psychology of optimism.
Yes. And I want to be very precise about this because optimism often gets grouped in with toxic positivity or just naive cheerleading.
Just smile through the pain kind of stuff.
Right, which doesn't work. The text is referencing the clinical concept of learned optimism pioneered by Dr. Martin Seligman.
Seligman's research proved that optimism isn't a genetic personality trait. It is a cognitive explanatory style.
It is how you explain the causes of events to yourself.
Right. When a pessimist encounters a failure, say a project gets rejected, they explain it as permanent, I'll never get this right, pervasive, I'm terrible at my whole job, and personal, I'm just not smart enough.
Whereas an optimist encountering the exact same rejection explains it as temporary, it was just a bad day. Specific, this particular pitch missed the mark, and external, the client didn't have the budget right now.
The behaviors of the optimist outlined in the text stem directly from this cognitive framing.
They actively look for the good in every situation. They seek the valuable lesson in every setback, which turns failure into data.
They focus relentlessly on solutions instead of admiring the problem.
By controlling their explanatory style, they prevent their amygdala from triggering that procrastination response we talked about. They maintain the emotional equilibrium required to tackle massive friction.
So let's review where we are. We have the architecture in place.
Right.
The listener has identified their A1 frog, they have factored in their internal constraints, and they are controlling their cognitive framing.
The mental runway is totally clear.
But they look at the A1 task, and it is a monolith. It is like a 6-month strategic overhaul.
It's terrifying.
How do we actually initiate execution without the sheer scale of the frog paralyzing us all over again?
The source offers a phenomenal historical metaphor here that perfectly illustrates the psychological mechanism of starting.
The Sahara Desert story.
Yes. It involved a crossing of the Tanzroft in the deep Sahara Desert. The author actually drove across this.
It's a 500-mile stretch of the Sahara that is essentially a geographic void. No dunes, no water, No vegetation, just a flat, featureless expanse of yellow sand that stretches endlessly to the horizon.
And it is terrifying because historically, hundreds of people died there. The wind would blow sand across the track, travelers would veer off course by a fraction of a degree, and they would simply vanish into the desert.
But the French colonials had devised a system to navigate this void. They placed a single black 55-gallon oil drum exactly every 5 kilometers along the route.
And that distance, 5 kilometers, is highly significant. Because of the curvature of the Earth, in that perfectly flat terrain, the horizon is exactly 5 kilometers away.
So as you drove, you could only ever see 2 oil barrels at any given time.
The one you had just passed and the one resting exactly on the horizon ahead of you.
You didn't need to comprehend the entire 500-mile desert. To survive, you only needed to steer for the very next oil barrel. Take it 1 barrel at a time, and the desert eventually ends.
This is the exact framework required for eating a monolithic frog. You do not focus on the 6-month strategic overhaul. You focus on the very next physical action.
The reason this works isn't just about making things look less scary, though. There is a deeply embedded psychological mechanism here called the Zeigarnik effect.
Combined with what the text calls the compulsion to closure.
Yes. The human brain fundamentally craves finality. When a task is unfinished, it creates cognitive tension.
It's like an open loop in your brain.
When we finish a task, even a microscopic one, the brain closes the loop, releases that tension, and rewards us with a microdose of endorphins.
By breaking the 500-mile desert into 5-kilometer chunks, or breaking a massive project into 30-minute subtasks, you are engineering a continuous stream of closure.
You are hacking your neurochemistry to generate momentum.
The text details 2 highly specific tactical methods for slicing up these projects to trigger that closure. The first is salami slicing.
Salami slicing is highly sequential. You look at the whole project, the whole salami, and you break it down into thin, manageable slices.
You resolve to cut just one slice. You don't write the whole book, you write one outline for one chapter. You don't build the whole app, you wireframe one single screen.
Just 1 barrel. The second method, which serves a slightly different psychological purpose, is the Swiss cheese method.
How is that different?
I use this constantly when my resistance is peaking. You use Swiss cheesing when you don't necessarily know the exact sequential steps, but you just need to puncture the membrane of procrastination.
So you commit to working on the massive task for a highly restricted time block, say 5 or 10 minutes, and then you give yourself strict permission to stop.
You were just punching a hole in the task, like a hole in a block of Swiss cheese.
The brilliance of this is how it bypasses the amygdala. The fear of starting a huge project is the fear of sustained, exhausting effort.
But if you promise your brain, we are only going to do this for 7 minutes and then we can quit, the threat level drops to 0.
The friction of entry is eliminated. And the secret is, once you punch that hole and overcome the initial inertia, the compulsion to closure usually kicks in.
You find your rhythm, and that 7 minutes turns into an hour.
But the text issues a massive flashing red warning right here.
We have to talk about single handling.
Yes. Once you trick yourself into starting the task, whether you slice the salami or punch the cheese, you must protect your attention at all costs. The principle is single handling.
Single handling is the discipline of selecting your A1 task, initiating it, and staying locked onto it single-mindedly until that specific slice is 100% complete. No diversions.
If you violate this rule, if you start the task, write 2 paragraphs, switch tabs to check an incoming email, reply to a Slack message, and then return to the task.
The source stays, so you incur a 500% time penalty.
A 500% increase in the time and energy required to complete the work.
We need to explain the cognitive science behind why that penalty is so severe, because most people still honestly believe they can multitask.
They think they're good at it.
Research by Dr. Sophie Leroy on a concept called attention residue explains this perfectly. The human brain cannot run parallel processes for complex cognitive tasks. We don't multitask, we task shift.
And every shift demands a heavy cognitive toll.
Exactly. Wait, let me take that a step further. When you shift your gaze from the strategic document to the Slack notification, your brain has to load an entirely new context into its working memory.
But it doesn't do it cleanly.
No. A piece of your attention remains stuck, or residue remains on the Slack message even after you look back at the document.
It is like having invisible background apps draining your phone's battery. When you return to the primary task, you have to refamiliarize yourself with where you were, reload the context, and fight through the inertia of starting all over again.
Doing that 10 times an hour exhausts your prefrontal cortex, which is why you feel completely drained by 3:00 p.m., even if you haven't actually accomplished any deep work.
Which leads us directly into the modern challenge of execution. The single greatest threat to single handling is sitting in your pocket or running on your second monitor.
Technology is the ultimate frog repellent.
It really is. The source uses a phrase that summarizes the modern dilemma perfectly. Technology is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant.
The behavioral data is just alarming. The text cites people checking their smartphones 85 times a day. We have built an ecosystem of continuous partial attention.
It is a weaponized dopamine loop. The text compares the inbox to a slot machine.
That's the perfect analogy. When the notification pings, your brain doesn't know what it is.
It could be a disaster, or it could be amazing news.
The uncertainty creates a dopamine spike. You abandon your A1 frog to go pull the lever on the slot machine, hoping for a psychological payout.
And the result is a workforce that is psychologically breathless, reacting continuously to other people's priorities rather than acting on their own.
I can hear the immediate objection from our listeners, though.
What's that?
The advice to just turn off your phone or do a digital detox sounds like a luxury for eccentric authors or CEOs who have executive assistants acting as gatekeepers.
Oh, totally.
If you are a mid-level manager, or you have an aging parent in poor health, or you have an infant in daycare, going completely dark for 4 hours feels wildly irresponsible.
The source material anticipates this exact friction point. The solution it proposes isn't absolute monastic isolation. The solution is architectural. It is called segmented communication.
We aren't relying on moral discipline to ignore the phone. We are redesigning the environment so we don't have to.
Precisely. You establish an emergency channel. This could be a specific unlisted phone number, a dedicated email address, or a VIP setting on your device that bypasses your do not disturb settings.
And you guard that channel ruthlessly. You give it to the daycare center. You give it to your parent's caregiver. You give it to your direct superior.
And no one else.
Yeah.
The psychological relief this provides is immense, because you know that if a genuine Category 1 emergency occurs, the VIP channel will break through.
That safety net changes everything. Because the emergency channel exists, you now have the psychological permission to completely shut down the general inbox, mute the Slack channels, and sever the slot machine loop without the low-grade anxiety that the world is burning down behind your back.
You are reclaiming sovereignty over your attention. There is a story in the text about a Fortune magazine journalist that perfectly encapsulates this posture toward technology.
Oh, I love this story.
He returns from a 2-week vacation in Europe, opens his laptop, and finds 700 unread emails waiting for him.
He does the math and realizes it will take him a solid week of administrative drudgery just to process the backlog before he can write a single word of his actual assignments.
So he assesses the reality of the situation, takes a breath, and hits delete all.
700 emails, gone in a keystroke, just gone.
The justification he gave is one of the most powerful mindset shifts in the entire book. He said, just because someone sends me an email, it does not mean they own a piece of my life.
It is the ultimate application of the E in the ABCDE method, eliminate.
Now, obviously, the author acknowledges that most corporate employees cannot delete their entire inbox without getting fired.
Yeah, please don't do that and blame us.
Right. But the underlying principle is sound. The vast majority of that you feel obligated to respond to is just noise. You can ignore, filter, and delete exponentially more than you currently do.
So if we assume the listener has established their VIP channels, muted the noise, and identified their A1 frog, what is the optimal biological rhythm for actually executing the work?
The text advocates for structuring your day around large, uninterrupted blocks of time, specifically pointing to the 90-minute focus block.
Which aligns perfectly with what chronobiologists call ultradian rhythms.
Right. Just as we have 90-minute sleep cycles at night, our brains operate in 90-minute cycles of peak cognitive alertness during the day, which was pioneered by researcher Nathaniel Kleitman.
So you aren't just managing time, you are surfing your biological waves.
You select your A1 task. You shut off the external world, and you plunge into 90 minutes of single-handled deep work. No bathroom breaks, no coffee refills, no just checking one thing.
When the 90 minutes end, your cognitive wave naturally crests and falls. You must then step away and take a 15-minute complete break to allow the prefrontal cortex to recover. Then you drop into a second 90-minute block.
3 hours of compounding, uninterrupted, deep work.
The author argues that a person executing one 3-hour block of single-handled work will literally double the productive output of someone who spends 8 hours in an open-plan office in a state of continuous partial distraction.
You are generating more leverage in a fraction of the time.
Let's pull back and look at the entire architectural blueprint we have constructed today. We started by accepting the mathematical impossibility of an empty inbox.
We move through the 7-step process of thinking on paper to clear vagueness.
We applied the fractal 80-20 rule and the ABCDE method to prioritize ruthlessly. We identified our internal bottlenecks.
We learned to slice the frog into 5-kilometer oil barrels to trigger the compulsion to closure.
And we built a 90-minute, distraction-free fortress to execute the work.
It is a highly robust operating system for professional life.
But I want to make sure we don't lose the humanity in all this mechanics.
That's important.
If we aren't careful, eating the frog sounds like a recipe for becoming a hyper-optimized corporate cyborg who just cranks out deliverables until they die.
And the source material is very clear on this point. Time management, sequence management, productivity, these are not ends in themselves. They are purely instrumental.
The author states that fully 85% of the happiness you experience in your life will not come from your A1 tasks. It will come from the quality of your relationships with other people.
The entire purpose of becoming ruthlessly efficient at eating frogs is to buy back your life.
There is a golden rule in the text. It is the quality of time at work that counts and the quantity of time at home that matters.
You deploy these extreme focus techniques so that you can execute your core responsibilities swiftly, leave the office at a reasonable hour, and actually be mentally and emotionally present with the people you love instead of sitting at the dinner table secretly stressing about an unread email.
The trap there is believing that balance is a static state you achieve and maintain effortlessly.
The text likens it to a tightrope walker. You are constantly making micro-adjustments.
Extreme, single-minded focus at work is the exact mechanism that funds your ability to be completely unfocused and relaxed at home.
So, to our listener, here is the immediate protocol. Do not wait until tomorrow morning to implement this.
The moment this deep dive ends, take 3 minutes. Look at the overwhelming red-tagged emergency room of your task list. Apply the ABCDE filter.
Find the single ugliest, highest consequence A1 frog.
And utilize the Swiss cheese method immediately. Commit to spending just 7 minutes on it. Punch one hole in the task.
Trigger the Zeigarnik effect and let the compulsion to closure pull you forward.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final, provocative avenue to explore on your own.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have spent this entire hour discussing eating the frog purely in the context of professional output, career trajectories, and project management.
Right, the work stuff.
But if we map this framework onto the broader landscape of human experience, the implications shift dramatically.
Oh, interesting.
What if your biggest, ugliest, most terrifying A1 frog has nothing to do with your career?
What if your true frog is a deeply uncomfortable conversation you have been avoiding with your spouse?
Yes. What if it is enforcing a boundary with a toxic family member? What if the frog is a massive, structural, life change like moving cities or changing careers that you have kept entirely off your written goals because acknowledging it would demand action?
Applying the 80-20 rule to your emotional life reveals that a very small number of courageous actions dictate the vast majority of your future peace.
We burn so much cognitive energy optimizing our spreadsheets and our daily routines to feel in control. But what would happen if you applied the concept of single-handling to your personal courage?
What is the one courageous action that, if completed, would account for 80% of your future happiness?
Whatever that is. Maybe it is time to stop looking at the broken triage system of your daily distractions. Stare that personal frog right in the eyes, slice the salami, and take the first bite.
The biological and emotional payoff of completing that task might just alter the entire trajectory of your life.
Until next time, thanks for taking the plunge with us. Go find your frog.